My dad was a repo man, and that was, in a way, the beginning of my sort of understanding of financial panics. In 1973, he was collecting debts for a place called Woolco, and he'd leave us in the car in his old Dodge Dart, and he'd arrive at the front door, and he'd pretend to be a meter reader, or he would pick up a toy in the front yard as if he was returning it, or something like that, pick up a cat. And he knocked on the door, and once he knocked on the door, he'd wedge his foot in the door, and pretty soon he'd be walking out with a television or a stereo or something like that. And that was what he did, is repossessions. Watching those repossessions out of the front seat of the car was probably my first training as a historian, really trying to reconstruct what happened, why are these people in the trouble that they're in. Americans borrow for the land that they settle. They do this through the land office in the 18-teens, they do it through the railroads in the 1850s, and when commodity prices drop, then Americans can't pay those debts. The mortgages collapse, and it turns out that those mortgages are often clumped into a lot of financial institutions, a lot of banking institutions, and when those mortgages collapse in large numbers, then you see financial panic commence. I talked to, at one point, the risk manager for Citywide. He said to me, yeah, but you know, land prices never really go down. And I said, well, except in 1793 when they went down 15%, and 1819 when they went down 30%, and 1837 when they went down 25 to 30%, or 1857 when they went down 18%. And he said, I had no idea. You know, and I said, well, look at a textbook. I mean, you know, America has a boom and bust cycle that's very much to do with land and very much to do with commodities and the relationship between those two things. And it's not a surprise to, say Warren G. Harding or Andrew Jackson, that prices are going to increase rapidly and then decrease just as rapidly. One way of thinking about these financial panics is Milton Friedman in 1965 with Anna Schwartz writes this book, A History of the American Financial History, basically. And what he says is that all of the crashes before are all about liquidity. Everything has to do with liquidity. And so all you have to do if there's a financial crisis is just pitch more dollars into the economy. And all crises, he says, at base are financial crises. Well, it turns out, I think that that's nonsense. It's a little like saying a fire is started because of the absence of water. Yes, it's true that water will put out a fire, but that doesn't tell you how a fire gets started, and that doesn't tell you ultimately what the fire is about. So this story about liquidity is basically throw more money into the system and things will calm down. And that's true if it's a minor blip, even if it's a kind of a more serious problem. But if it's a major financial catastrophe, then no amount of cash is going to solve this problem. It's basically restructuring the debt that's at the core of most of the major banks that has to happen. And that does happen in 1819 and 1837 and 1857. And that restructuring, we're still in the middle of it. We still haven't got, part of the reason we're not quite out of this is because the various parts of Dodd-Frank are not fully in place, because a lot of these assets are still in derivative transactions, with $600 trillion in derivative transactions that are really at the center of the capital of most banks, what are called LCFOs, large and complicated financial organizations. So it's really the capital structure that's the problem, not liquidity. My dad bought land. He was a minor speculator in real estate, but he had in his mind the idea that this could all go south. It was always in the back of his mind. He was frugal in a way, and maybe that's in some ways will be the lesson of 08 and 09 is a kind of sense that all of this could collapse. And what's my backup plan? What's the other thing that I can do? What's the other job that I can take? What's the other place that I can go? And my dad knew about that. He'd seen it a lot, and I think we're all seeing it a lot now.